What if I told you that your mood, your thoughts, even your mental health are being influenced by a hidden network, a kind of biological intelligence operating deep inside you? Well, it's true, and tonight we're going to decode that very system.
All right, here's our mission briefing. First, we'll dive into what scientists call the second brain. Then we'll intercept the messages coming from your microbiome. After that, we'll look at how COVID-19 acted as a catalyst, and we'll unpack the data and the debate around vaccines. Finally, we'll explore how we can recalibrate this system and what it all means for the future of health.
Yeah, you heard that right. It's like this biological superhighway of information, a nonstop conversation that is literally shaping how you feel and function, day in and day out. And this isn't science fiction, folks. This is the cutting-edge science of the gut-brain axis. Okay, let's get right into it. We're starting with the absolute fundamentals, the communication network itself. What exactly is this connection that has scientists calling our gut our second brain? It's called the gut-brain axis. And look, this is not a one-way street where your brain just barks orders at your gut. No. Think of it as a super complex two-way data highway. Your gut has this massive neural network of its own, and it is constantly sending signals back up to your brain. It's a feedback loop. We're talking hormones, neurotransmitters, immune signals, all of it flowing in both directions, shaping everything from your mood to your stress levels.
So, that's the big question, right? A perfectly tuned network is one thing, but what happens when the signals get crossed or when the messengers themselves are compromised? Well, that question leads us directly to the trillions upon trillions of microorganisms living inside that very system.
So who are these messengers anyway? Well, in this section, we're going to get to know the gut microbiota. We'll dig into the powerful and frankly mind-blowing links between the bacteria in our gut and our mental state. Okay, now check this out. This data, which comes from the journal Nutrients, shows some really fascinating patterns. For example, researchers are seeing that people with anxiety and bipolar disorder often have lower levels of a bacteria called Faecalibacterium, and those with depression, they often have less Dialister and Coprococcus. Now, it's really important to say these are correlations, right? Not proof of cause. But it's a huge clue into this connection. I mean, some of these bacteria actually produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine right there in your gut, the very chemicals that directly affect your mood. So you have this incredibly fine-tuned communication system. But what happens when a totally new global stressor slams into it? The COVID-19 pandemic became this massive, real-world event that didn't just disrupt our lives, it gave researchers an unprecedented chance to study the gut-brain axis under extreme pressure. Now, before we get into any debates, let's be absolutely clear about what we know about the virus itself. The research here is pretty undeniable. A severe COVID-19 infection can leave a serious lasting impact, triggering a whole cascade of health issues long after you've recovered. A big systematic review by Badenoch and colleagues, plus a bunch of other studies, all confirm it. After a severe case of COVID-19, many people experience these persistent neuropsychiatric symptoms. We're talking anxiety, depression, crushing fatigue, and cognitive issues, brain fog. And it's often linked to things like having been in the ICU and having high levels of inflammation during the sickness. All right, we're now moving into a really complex and, let's be honest, often contentious area of science. It is absolutely crucial to understand that our job here isn't to draw final conclusions. It's to lay out the different streams of peer-reviewed research and the hypotheses that are currently shaping the scientific conversation. The data is definitely not all pointing in one direction. On one side, you have a hypothesis from Rubio Casillas and his team, published in 2024. They propose a possible mechanism where the vaccine spike protein could potentially bind to receptors in the gut and disrupt the microbiome. But then, on the other hand, you have a separate study by Guan and colleagues that actually tracked people after vaccination and found that, for them, the overall composition of their gut microbiome stayed stable. So to understand one of the mechanisms being proposed, we have to get a little technical for a second. A paper by Thorpe and his colleagues, which cites the work of Sinef and Nye, focuses on a specific part of the vaccine's genetic code. They theorize that this GXXG zipper motif, as they call it, could increase the risk of proteins in the body misfolding into these toxic clumps, which they suggest could potentially accelerate things like prion diseases.
So what's the bottom line here? The bottom line is that this is one piece of a huge, incredibly complex puzzle. These are proposed mechanisms, these are hypotheses, and they are very much still being investigated and debated within the scientific community. They are not settled facts. So after looking at the system and all its potential disruptions, the focus for researchers naturally shifts to solutions, right? The big question becomes, can we actively, intentionally improve that conversation between the gut and the brain? So let's see what the research says about recalibrating the whole system.
The research points to 3 key strategies. First up, probiotics. Think of these as bringing in reinforcements, the good bacteria themselves, like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. Second, you've got prebiotics. This is all about feeding the good bacteria you already have. Dietary fibers are basically fuel to help your native microbes thrive. And third, postbiotics. These are the incredibly valuable compounds that your bacteria produce when they digest prebiotics. Things like short-chain fatty acids are critical because they can lower inflammation and strengthen the gut wall, directly influencing the signals being sent to your brain.
So where is all of this taking us? Well, we are standing right on the edge of a brand new frontier in medicine. It's one that stops seeing the mind and the body as 2 separate things and instead sees them as one single, deeply integrated system.
If there's one single thing to take away from all of this, it's this. The gut isn't just for digestion. The brain is not some isolated command center. They are partners. They're in a constant, intricate dance that basically dictates our health and our well-being. And that just perfectly illustrates the most exciting part. We are just getting started. We are literally just beginning to learn the language of our own biology, trying to decipher these signals sent by our microbiome, and realizing just how much more there is to discover about ourselves. So we're left with this one final fascinating question. As we keep decoding this complex internal network, could it be that the future of mental health care isn't just in our heads, but might actually be hidden deep within our gut?